What's up, guys? Thanks so much for checking out the channel again. Today we are continuing our series of Hail Caesar faction reviews. We took a look at the Seleucids in the last one, which again is kind of a powerhouse, and we're going to see here if another one of Alexander's sort of successor kingdoms here, the Ptolemaic Egypt list here, is going to do as well for us. So here, this list basically covers about mid-3rd century through 1st centuries BC. So things to look at if you're not too familiar: Ptolemy I Soter, Battle of Gaza, Syrian Wars, and the Battle of Raphia. So let's take a look at what the list lets us do or requires from us. Again, mainly infantry based, 25% there, pikes, 25% of the infantry. So starting off very similar to the Seleucids. Cavalry also at least a quarter of the army. So far so good. Whereas the Seleucids though got a little bit more artillery. Here we actually just get 1 unit period. That being said, though, we do get up to 10% of the list in elephants. So that is also pretty powerful there. And then sort of the typical division and skirmisher requirements that we've seen a lot lately. Although, yeah, skirmishers being here up to 50% per division of infantry, so that's pretty neat. So starting off, again, we get that solid core to a list and showing that Macedonian influence here of phalangite heavy infantry. And again, we have some interesting diversions here, though, from what we've seen more recently. But our bog standard unit, again, 32 points, phalanx, heavy infantry stat line, basically. We could reduce those to basically be Egyptian levies, which, obviously we haven't seen yet. But still having phalanx, but in just a much cheaper unit. So you have the levy rule, discount on price, of course, more of a medium infantry stat line as far as clash and sustain are concerned, but you still have that heavy infantry morale save. So that's actually a neat option to explore there. Now we could upgrade half of them to veteran, which is interesting because we could have, I suppose, veteran levies, which would be kind of interesting. But that's a 3-point upgrade there to get us drilled, and then 1 single unit essentially as a guard unit, which brings in elite and stubborn again at 9 points. On top of drilled, which we've already seen before. So again, just a very solid core. You can't go wrong with that, and it's obviously required at least a quarter of your list there being infantry, but then also a quarter of the infantry or more being pikes. So moving on, though, we get our little selection of peltasts here with spears or javelins, and we could also downgrade them into small units. But we start off bog standard, light infantry stat line here, 5s, which again, respectable, but is not going to stand up to a more dedicated combat unit. That being said, we do get access to 1 unit of Thracians with the Rhomphaea, which brings us tough fighters, which adds another clash, does change the short range a little bit, but that being said, it's still a light unit, so don't the advice there is not to get any crazy ideas and think that unit can do more than what it's really designed for. But you should, assuming the dice are with you and all that, do better against other weaker light units or skirmisher type units if you encounter those. We move on. We get Galatian medium infantry warbands here, just 1 unit of those. And again, we could also upgrade that 1 unit to naked fanatics. Again, gives you another sort of trick in the bag here, aside from just masses of pike blocks and other light type units here. So you get essentially a horde of, literally wild fighters, but allows you to throw 9 dice there, which is pretty solid. But again, more of on a medium infantry frame with the morale save of 5. But if you go the naked route, you get fanatics and frenzy charge on top of that too. So that could be, again, a nice ace to keep in the hole there. Then we get our skirmisher selection, which are basically just our typical small javelin units there. Although we could upgrade 1 to an Aetolian unit, show some more Greek influence there, and that gives them marksmen, so that's actually pretty neat. And again, this list, compared to the Seleucids, does have a little bit less in the way of long-range firepower, so just something to keep in mind. But we have some other unique, interesting choices here too. So Egyptian, Arab, or Jewish skirmishers with slings to get a little bit more long range, but those are all levies, but again, nice and dirt cheap there. Similar Egyptian or Syrian or Arab skirmishers with bow, small units, and 1 of those could actually be Cretans, so we could upgrade there just to get another marksman. But again, so far a lot of levy skirmishers to get that long range, but that keeps them nice and cheap too. We do get a Gamma Heavy Cavalry, so very similar to the Seleucid one there. But again, gives us a very elite cavalry unit. You're definitely going to pay the points cost for it, but again, mobility and hard hitting power there is definitely something useful. We get Claruk or Claruch, medium cavalry with spears and or javelins. Again, just a slight downgrade, but they're still drilled, which is cool. So whether you want to go the full heavy cavalry route or just a very solid medium route, but having drilled access to basically the mobile portion of your army being drilled essentially or most of it drilled is very useful as far as giving orders and all that fun stuff is concerned too. We get into the light cavalry with javelins as small units here, and about what you would expect. But that being said, we could also upgrade into feigned flight, and there's no other restrictions on that, so that's always neat there. It does take them up to 19 points. But again, just being able to bring that in quantity opens up other avenues and other strategies and tactics that you can bring in across the board for your cavalry. And then showing more of the I guess the Egyptian influence here. So we do have access to Arab camel-mounted light cavalry with bows and javelins, but just one unit of those. Another feigned flight unit, but it does give us a little bit of a long-range option. So not necessarily something you have to take, but worth considering at least. We do get our elephants with mixed crews. So again, just a smidgen of long-range power there, but again, elephants do have a very useful place. We do get access to the Libyan 4-horse light chariots with javelin crews, which here aren't being separated into like a separate category like we saw with the Seleucids. So this would essentially fall under the cavalry category, if I'm not mistaken. But you get mobility, very very great morale save, and hard hitting as well. So definitely worth considering that to supplement some of the other things that you don't get compared to your Seleucid counterparts. And then the one unit of artillery that you do have access to are medium artillery bolt throwers, so you're definitely packing some solid long-range firepower there. So, considering it's just the one unit, there's no reason not to take it and at least get access to that, because that's, again, some very long-range firepower. And then all this is under Leadership 8, as you might expect. So in many ways, a mirror to the Seleucid list, and definitely a powerful list if used properly. That being said, I think overall the Seleucids at least have a little bit more variety to it, but that can also be a little bit more difficult if you struggle to sort of incorporate all that into a bigger, more complex battle plan. But that being said, take nothing away from the Ptolemaic Egypt list here. Again, you have some familiar things in the form of the Greek-style units or Macedonian-style units mixed in with some of the cheaper skirmisher type options, local options. So like again, the Egyptian, Syrian, Arab, or Jewish skirmishers there gives you a lot of that. Would have been nice to see a little bit more access to some of the other Egyptian type of units, how those were incorporated. I guess we do have that, I guess, in the Egyptian levy phalangites, which again would be interesting to model as well. And paint up just to show a difference there. And again, an interesting option to explore, just because you keep the morale save, you get downgraded a little bit on the clash, but it's still phalanx, although again levy as well, but fairly cheap to fill out a little bit more on the infantry side. So overall fun, and definitely would be an interesting one to paint up as well. And again, worth testing out if you already collect Macedonians and some form of the other sort of Middle Eastern style units here, or like Persians a little bit. You could easily proxy or test this army out and get a feel for it and see if that'd be something you want to explore a little bit. But that again gives you another great thing to test out, as opposed to just being stuck with the Macedonian list that you had. And even those playing other armies like the Greeks or things like that, you could easily test this out with just a little bit of work. But definitely, I think one that's worth collecting, getting painted up, and just showing on the tabletop as well. So again, that is the Ptolemaic Egypt list here. Again, factoring in roughly mid-3rd through 1st centuries BC. And again, a worthy list here that can definitely also be a powerhouse when fielded with like an experienced general knowing how to incorporate all these different things here. You got options where you can kind of go very balanced between infantry and cavalry with a little bit of artillery and elephants incorporated, or if you feel like you want to leave those off and kind of go heavy on or heavier on one side or the other, you can do all kinds of different things with this list. So definitely a worthwhile one. Personally, probably would have preferred to see like a little bit more access to artillery, just to um, show, I guess, maybe some more of that influence from when it switched from like the actual Macedonian list into the Ptolemaic list. But again, um, that's fine. Just having that one unit of medium bolsters is still pretty solid there. And I probably wouldn't, leave off the elephants. I guess there should be some room for that. I think in your list, just if nothing else, then to distract the enemies with. So overall, again, a fun one. Let us know in the comments, guys, if you have collected or tried out the Ptolemaic Egyptian list. What have your successes or failures been there? What about facing it? Have you faced a list like that? Again, we've seen all the similarities that it has to some of the other Macedonian successor lists with a few differences. Where have your successes and where have your failures been against something like that? Let us know in the comments, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by. Take care, and we will see you in the next one.